Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I've pretty much failed NaNoWriMo, but we'll talk about that later. Today I'd like to film a video for you about strong female lead characters in books. Mainly we're going to be talking about fantasy just because this is what I read most, but in general these are some of the books that I really love thanks to their strong female leads, and I feel like this is a broad topic, so let's just get into that. As a preamble, I'd like to mention that strong lead characters do not necessarily mean that they have special powers or some superhero strength or anything like that. By strong female characters, I personally mean characters that have certain strong characteristics. Those are women that are really well developed, their character is very strong. It does not have to be necessarily strong in a typical way, it can be very feminine, it can be very masculine in a way, but those are just characters that I strongly feel for because they are so maybe independent or knowing what they want. They can all want different things, but you'll see from the selection that I made that they're very different women, but each one of them has this certain spark that just gives the book something extra and makes those books ones of my favorites. So we'll start with the only book that I don't have in my possession, unfortunately, and I'm going to be talking about a classic. It's Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Of course, I'm going to be talking about Scarlett O'Hara because she's a force to be reckoned with. I don't think anyone who read the book or saw the movie could be under the impression that Scarlett is not a strong female character. Her spirit is as strong as they come. She is pretty much unbreakable, despite being quite unlikable in many a way. I think Scarlett is really getting across that spirit of never giving up and pursuing her dreams and wants with everything that she's got. And she earns my respect in that manner because she refuses to take no for an answer. She refuses to have the circumstances get the better of her. She swears that she will never feel hunger again, and she goes for her purpose in life with all that screaming passion of living, and this is why I like her character so much. To be honest, the character of Millie in that book is also a very strong side character, and I feel like this book was so very well balanced with strong female characters, even if they weren't in the lead. For example, India is quite a strong female character as well in that book, even though she doesn't get that much of a role. I feel like the women in that book were very well fleshed out, but Scarlett just takes the cake because it means that a woman doesn't have to be likable per se. She can be very likable if she turns her charm on, but in this case it just goes to show that the character doesn't have to be wholly good or bad to be strong. And that's why I love Scarlett so much. She's a survivor and she is a force to be reckoned with. The next female character I'd like to talk to you about is a character from A Darker Shade of Magic, but I'm showing you The Gathering of Shadows by Schwab. Why? Because this is the second book of the trilogy, and I feel like this is where the character of Lila really shines a lot. She was one of my favorites. She becomes a main character, not really in the beginning of the book, but it's pretty clear by the end of the first novel that she has a huge part to play in the series, and she is just so badass. Lila is super cutthroat, so totally different from what we were talking about with Scarlett. Lila just uses the circumstances to the best of her ability. She circumnavigates all those holes that want to suck her in, and she doesn't give in to their strength at all. She is not very trusting, that's for sure, but once she trusts someone, she's incredibly loyal. Even though she doesn't want to admit it face to face, she doesn't like acknowledging her feelings, she prefers to run away from it, but it doesn't make her any less of a character because of that. Lila gets a very strong character arc in the series. She gets to be that character who goes through so much, doesn't give up, and pushes herself to the limits, as we can see in that book through the tournament. There's a tournament in this book, it's really awesome. Lila has to exploit every bit of her energy until she's wiped clean in order to prove her worth, and she just does it for herself. She doesn't even do it for anybody else. People keep telling her, Lila, back off, you're going to get hurt, you're going to suffer. But she's like, I know what I'm doing, I know my limits, and even if it is beyond my limits, I'm going to give it my best shot anyway. Which is why I completely adore her. I feel like she is such a lovely character to follow, especially because her choices bring her so much trouble. Like, she keeps on avoiding having those talks with people, she keeps avoiding emotions, but in the end she can't really escape that. And this is why I feel like A Gathering of Shadows is my favorite book out of the trilogy. I feel like I'm due for a reread because this series were just like a hit in the feels, and I just want to experience it all over again. A series that I've mentioned a couple of times on this channel already and which remains one of my favorites to date, but unfortunately not that well known anymore because it's a 90s discovery, is A Daughter of the Empire by Raymond, Feist and Janny Wurts. This book is set in a world that is divided. There is a world called Kavanagh, which is the empire where our main character is coming from. It's an Asian-inspired fantasy setting, and I love how well that was done. It's definitely Asian-inspired, but there are no particular routes that you will be able to connect to some of our known Asian lands. It's completely original, and our main character, Mara, she is a daughter of one of the well-known families that rule the kingdom, one of the noble-born women, and she is intending to give her life to service to one of the goddesses of healing and where maidens go to spend their lives. Unfortunately, in the first chapter, she is interrupted by news that her whole family was murdered by a rivaling family in a very treacherous manner, and Mara has to take the helm. In this world where the families of the Kavanagh land like fight for their survival, the biggest thing to worry about is honor. Honor has to be upheld, and Mara is struggling because she has zero resources. Every single resource that she had gone off to war with her family and was killed on the spot, and she has to survive battling with an ancient family that also rivals hers, and she pretty much has nobody. And she is one of the strongest female leads ever. She is such a strong woman. She's a girl of 16 when the book starts, and she is pulling resources out of freaking nowhere. She just comes up with those crazy ideas that shouldn't work because she's a very creative thinker, and the standards of the land are very rigid, so you're not allowed to, for example, employ any warriors that are not directly related to your family or weren't in service. So she's using all these kinds of loopholes that she comes up with so that she can survive. And this series is so like politic heavy, but at the same time I've never met a character in a book that does politics better than Mara. And this is why I think you should read this series for sure. If you like strong female leads, you will adore her. I promise you, you will fall in love. Next on, we've got Uprooted by Naomi Novik, and this is one of my favorites, as I said in a recent video. And you know why? Because it starts out as such a standard story, but it is so much more than that. It's about this girl Agnieszka who is living in a small village near a very evil wood, and there is a wizard there living in a tower who kind of protects the villagers from the wood, but in return he expects a girl servant every 10 years to come into his tower and live there without any contact with anybody. So as the time comes for another ceremony of choosing to happen, Agnieszka is super convinced that her friend Kasia is going to be picked because she is the most beautiful, most gorgeous, strong character person in the whole freaking village. And usually that's what happens because the wizard, who is by the way called the dragon, totally awesome, always picks the special ones. And Agnieszka is very unspecial, she's very clumsy, she has all kinds of faults. Anyway, unfortunately, or fortunately for us and for the interest of the reader, Agnieszka gets picked for being the servant, and the story goes from there. So I liked very much how this classic twist on maybe a bit of Beauty and the Beast, maybe some other classic folk tales, have all taken a turn when confronted with Agnieszka's character. At first, Agnieszka is this very hesitant kind of girl who is trying to figure out where she is in this new world in the Tower of the Dragon. And she is very cautious and also afraid of his power, but once she kind of finds her limits, she finds herself unable to keep her mouth shut. And once that happens, we get to enjoy a lot of healthy banter between the two, and she really takes control of the relationship. Now, I know some people have said that their relationship dynamic isn't very pleasing to them because they feel like there's such a big experience and age gap in between them, but what I feel like is that no matter the age gap and no matter how much more experience the dragon as a very age-old wizard has, he is no match for Agnieszka's vivacious spirit, for her ideas of how the world should work, and for creative approaches that she has to magic. The dragon's whole life experience is pretty much nullified when he gets to know her, because she turns everything upside down. She doesn't conform. She doesn't hold his ideas of beauty so highly. She thinks they're bullshit. She likes her simple dresses. She doesn't want to be dressed up like she's in court. She doesn't get politics. She just wants to create a better world for herself and her family. And in the end, when those two kind of have a thing going on, Agnieszka is the one in control. She's the one who's pushing things. She's the one who initiates it. She's the one who's in control. And in the end, no matter how much the dragon wants to escape, how much he wants to kind of return to the familiar, return to his loneliness, be kind of an outcast, how he had used to be for centuries, Agnieszka just doesn't let him get away with it. She brings out the best in him, and I feel like that's her best strength. And that's why I like her character so much more than the character of Kasia, who was supposed to be the traditional strong female lead, and she is a very strong character as we see later in the book, but Agnieszka just makes every single other character kind of obsolete. She's just too good for this world. Our next book is really badass, you're going to love it. This is The Double Life of Mistress Kavanagh by Marina Fiorato. I read it, I feel like a year or two ago, and I completely loved this book. If you love stories about Mulan, like stories that involve cross-dressing and pretending to be something you're not to achieve your goal, then you're going to love The Double Life of Mistress Kavanagh. This is a historical fiction book, but it reads... it's wonderful. It's following Kit, who is a bartender, I think, in Ireland, and she just wed. Her husband is swept off to join the ranks of the army, and he leaves in the night without telling her anything. And she loves her husband, and she wants to recover him, and she cannot understand why he decided to leave for the army, because it doesn't pay so well and it just doesn't feel right to her. So she cross-dresses as a man to find out where her husband has been shipped off to, and she ends up in Italy, where she joins the ranks of the soldiers. She has to survive amongst them, she has to fight, and then to make matters worse, she has to become a spy to kind of turn the battle around, and in the process she's looking for her husband, but there's also the army life, and this is such an exciting freaking book. It's set in my favorite period. I think the 18th century is a very strong period. For me, it's just so much fun. I just love the contrast in between the soldier life and the life that she leads as a female spy, and this book was just so good. This book is down to the nitty-gritty, so it covers Kat's journey from thinking through all these things, how she has to pretend to be a guy, to all the technicalities, you know, the periods, the things that she cannot think of, all those things that she has to handle, she handles perfectly. This book covers how she discovers how much more there is to army life and how she can find her own very strong abilities. There's a training sequence, of course, because who doesn't like some training in a book? And this book and Kit's strength is in relationships. She knows what she wants, she goes for it, but in the end she just finds a new family for herself in her army life and makes new connections, and in the end that's what counts the most. And she's also wise, she doesn't give away her whole history, and that's what makes her such an unforgettable character. Alright, time to talk about one of my favorites. It's Terry Goodkind's Wizard's First Rule, and if you heard me talk on this channel for a while, you know I love that series. It's a freaking long book series. It's like 7 books, 10 books. By now it's really long, but it's over. So that's the good part, I guess, for you if you haven't read it yet. But I gotta tell you, even though it follows Richard, who is our main protagonist, there are so many very strong female characters in this book, but because we're talking about sort of protagonist characters, I'm going to talk about Kellen Umnell. In the first book, she's very big of a presence, but she gets even stronger in the later books, and she really shines through, and we get her perspective a lot, which is why I absolutely love this series. Kaylin is my ideal of a strong woman. She is self-sufficient, she knows what she wants, she knows her duty. She is a very strong female character because she knows how to lead, she knows how to be confident, but she has these moments of doubt that just tear at her from inside, because Kaylin is that sort of a character. She is a confessor, which means that she can bend people to her will to make them answer truthfully. But once she does that, there is no way back for the person. So once she has confessed somebody, he is no longer the person that he used to be. He pretty much loses his own will, his own personality. The only thing that's left is this desire to please the confessor, which is why he must answer truthfully. So this is a very unique bit of magic, and this is why Kaylin is struggling with her powers so much, because she doesn't want to use them at all. She doesn't want to cause pain or tear anybody out of her family. She doesn't want anybody to suffer that sense of loss of identity. She understands the value of life too much. In one of the books, Kaylin and Richard were separated on different sides of the world, and Kaylin had to admit that to pursue Richard right now would not yield her the results that she needs, and she realized that she had way more important things waiting for her in her homeland. She had to protect her people, she had to stand tall, and that's what makes her so impressive. You know, she's not that girl who gets hit by feelings and then just runs off with them. She's very strategic, she's very clever, but inside it's like a turmoil of feelings, and she knows that she has to make it all happen. So this is why I like this series so much. Aside from Kaylin, there's so many more strong female characters. I feel like there's more strong female characters in these books than male characters, which is a very good thing considering this was written in the 90s. But I'm just going to tell you straight away, Kaylin is my ideal of a woman, and there's not much else to be said. Alright, last one for today is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, and The Red Sister is a book that is currently nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards for the year 2017. And just to tell you, Red Sister is a really cool start to a very strong trilogy. The next book, Grey Sister, is going to be coming out next year. This book is about a little girl called Nona who has these crazy powers, and she's kind of a bit of a cutthroat killer. She was accused of a murder, and to save her from death, an abbess of a nunnery had taken her away to be educated and become a deathly lethal force. And I feel like the strength of Nona's character is in her knowledge of the value of friendship. Nona's friends among this book are wonderful girls, but what makes this character so strong is that she is willing to give up everything for her friends, but she is coming through a big journey to understand that you don't have to declare somebody a friend in order for them to count themselves as your friend. So she's trying to find her place in this world because her life was so difficult, but I find that she's so strong and she is very stubborn, and when she sees a wrong, she says it's wrong and she's willing to stand by her choices. And even though she's willing to bend herself a little to the circumstances, in the end she's the same girl and she knows what's right and wrong, and you'll never be able to dissuade her. She is very open-hearted, so it's easy to love her and she will easily love you back, but she is such a strong person that it just makes me really happy that you can witness this journey. So check this book out too. Well, there you go guys, those were some books with very strong female protagonists and leads. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you would like to read any of these books, and also let me know if you've read any other books with strong protagonists that I should know about. I'm thinking to do another video on strong side characters, female characters, because I feel like this is also something that would be quite interesting. But let me know if you would also find it so. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so let me know what you think down below, leave me a like or thumbs up or something so that I know, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!